I'd like to welcome the witnesses. Look, ICBF, you've lost the dressing room. It's quite clear you've lost the dressing room. Your board have lost the dressing room. And I'd like to know in a minute, who's your board made up of? That they're so disconnected from the reality that's going on the ground. There's an absolute outcry as to what you've done here. An absolute outcry. Farmers have lost confidence in you. The political system here, it's obvious, has lost total confidence in you. And in the ICBF and their indices, the farmers are the most affected, are those that followed ICBS advice and had herds of 4-star and 5-star cattle. Why should they now change from these cows and risk ICBF changing their minds again? The replacement index is becoming a farce, and the only farmers that will follow these indices are those that are forced to, as part of the escape scheme. There was no consultation with the breed societies prior to the changes being agreed. Societies were informed of the changes to the economic model, but the impact of the changes were never shared with the societies. It is evident from the changes to breeding valuation that the ICBF have still not conveyed all the changes that they have made to the calculations. You admitted that yourselves, at your lack of consultation. When a rare breed such as a Dexter is brought towards the top of an economic index, it is fundamentally broken. They are, by definition, non-profit making, and following the index will lead to financial ruin. It is also evident that these types of cattle are being promoted in other beef breeds. ICBF have stated that no farmer will be financially affected by the changes to the scheme. Who will compensate both pedigree breeders and replacement providers that invested in what the ICBF said were 4- and 5-star animals that can no longer provide progeny suitable for the scheme? The bulls being elevated to the top of the replacement index will have a major negative impact on both the carcass's weight and the weaning weight that farmers can produce. This in turn affects farmers' viability and the quality aesthetics of the Irish beef producers. I have a number of questions, and they are going to be very quick fire because I have quite a lot of them and I don't think we'll be able to go through all of them. Who requested Teagasc to develop a new algorithm for calculating the indexes? I'll do 3 at a time. What was the objective of the exercise that Teagasc undertook? And what is the new algorithm optimised for?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Deputy. So in terms of the actual model, the model is the same. So it's the same model as we used in 2015 and 2012. And I've outlined at the outset the background to the model development and where it's used and how it's used. The changes that have been implemented are economic changes. So they're price changes effectively, so fertiliser price, feed prices, contractor prices and so on. And as we know, they have changed, and Mr. Coughlin outlined at the outset the price indexes and where they have gone, and we see that every day in our daily lives and in our farming lives. So that's I think that's not surprising at all. The other element of it where there is a change is the carbon piece, and I know a number of deputies have referred to the carbon piece already. So the carbon sub-index, or the carbon component of the model, has been developed probably now 13 years, 2010. So we had a PhD student in 2012 who developed that sub-model, and that has been part of the overall farm systems model since then.
Who requested Teagasc to develop a new algorithm?
So there's no new algorithm, Deputy. So so there's new prices put into the model, but it's the same model.
Was the data from the commercial and pedigree population split or combined while conducting the analysis?
So the data is one set of data. I mean, we don't separate out the pedigrees. I mean, the pedigrees are separated out in terms of there are within breed indexes provided, but in terms of the genetic evaluations, all of the data goes into the same evaluation, which I think is appropriate. Otherwise, Deputy, there's a real risk that you end up with animals that are suitable for pedigree herds and not suitable for commercial herds, and that would be a disaster.
You're not comparing apples and oranges by combining the data. Should allowances have been made for pedigree breeds?
I don't agree, Deputy, simply because the core customer for the pedigree breeders are the commercial farmers. So like, yes, pedigree breeders do sell some bulls to other pedigree breeders, but the vast majority of pedigree bulls go to commercial farmers. So they need to be suitable for those commercial farmers.
Administration is not a strong point for all farmers, so the accuracy of the subjective data coming from farmers will not be very high. Is this not impacting on the integrity and the accuracy of the calculations?
So that's a point, Deputy, that is constantly raised. And there's no doubt that more accurate data is always better in terms of doing these evaluations. But there is this constant narrative out there that somehow that commercial farmers are not capable of giving an indication and an accurate indication of what's happening on their farms. And I would strongly refute that. The data we have strongly refutes that. We would just not get, and I know it's a technical term, but we would not achieve the heritabilities on those traits that we are achieving if that data was not accurate.
Is there any reason why a different index calculation optimised for the role of the continental pedigree herd, breeding the seed stock and foundations for future generations cannot be developed?
There is absolutely no reason why that's required. There is more than enough in the current indexes. The reality, Deputy, is that if we look at the makeup of the national suckler herd, and you take it from 2008 to 2022, the breed profile in the national suckler herd hasn't really changed. If anything, you have a few percent less Angus and Hereford. You have a couple of percent less, maybe first cross in the dairy herd. But the makeup of the population has remained the same. And we have seen over the last, in the advent of BDGP, that Charolais breeders, people using Charolais, Limousin, Simmental, Angus, Hereford, whatever breed you want, have been able to make progress. The other thing I would say is that, because we talk about the numbers of the breed representation on the active bull list, that's a red herring. Farmers, commercial suckler farmers out there, they have a preferred choice. And they've stuck with that over the last 15 years, since 2008, since in the time period that we have decent records. And they're choosing to stay with the Continentals, and they will still be able to choose the Continental. They might have to choose a slightly different bull if they're breeding their replacements. But the representation of the traditional breeds on the active bull list has always been more than what their representation. So, like prior to the recent changes, there were still 30 or 40 Angus and Hereford and Shorthorn bulls on the active bull list. But yet the representation of the national cow population is only 20%. So the mindset, and it's the same on dairy, it's the same on sheep, it's the same right across the species. Farmers, they like a breed, and they'll go and they'll stick with that breed.
This is a very serious question. Are you fully aware of the impact on farmers' income, their wellness, and mental health based on what the impact of the new index on his top cows and ability to make a living? I'm just telling you, some people have lost 40% of their income because of this decision. Wiped out overnight. Wiped out overnight. Have you any understanding what you've done here? And will you go back to the board and explain the anger that's out there for the people and suspend this for a while until there's an independent review on it? That's all we're asking. You have to do this. You cannot do it. You're stabbing farmers not in the back, straight into the heart on this issue. And you have to understand the feeling and the anger that's out here today. That's out there all week. That's out there since this happened. Overnight, he wiped out people's incomes. The mental health stress you've caused out there is astonishing. And the board has to give very serious consideration to what they've done here about their own futures. But do you realise what you've done out there? Do you?
Deputy, I've been well aware of it. I've been at various meetings. I've been taking calls from farmers. I'm very well aware of what's happening. I mean, one of the challenges, and look, I mentioned earlier about the communication piece. I have talked, I mean, there are genuine cases out there, but there is a lot of fear mongering out there as well, Deputy, right? And I genuinely believe that, because I have talked to farmers who rang me personally with a serious problem. I look at their herd, explain what's going on, and suddenly the problem, a lot of the farmers when they were ringing didn't even know what the changes had happened. And some of them are worried about the indexes. Sorry. Yeah. So a lot of the farmers that are worried about the indices are not even in SCEP. So I'm not diminishing for a second. There is a lot of especially among some pedigree breeders, right? In fairness, some of the pedigree breeders, they have bulls, they have dropped on stars. What I would say is that from a SCEP point of view, so first of all, from a SCEP point of view, it's only taking 40% of the bulls. The second thing I would say is that in terms of the eligibility for the SCEP scheme, is the animal has to be 4 or 5 star within or across breed. There are only 4.5% of the bulls that were 4 or 5 star within or across breed that are now not 4 or 5 star within or across breed.
And I don't fully agree with you when you tell me you're well aware of it, because if you're well aware of it, you would have gone back to the board and had a re-look at this decision of the people that are losing incomes. But look, you're entitled to your... are we entitled to obtain the minutes of board meetings? Number one, just one moment. And I asked you a question. Will the board consider suspending these changes till after an independent review? We're not saying disqualify them or cut them out altogether, but just suspend them until after an independent review. But are we entitled to look at board minutes? Because we need to see what is that board included into what's going on in the real world.
So I'll let the chair come in there now in a second, but I mean, good corporate governance suggests that the board minutes are not available. I mean, that's very clear. That's interfering with board business. In terms of, I mean, I think...
Briefly though, Mr. Coughlin, Deputy Collins's time is up.
So just to the other one is that Deputy, reversing these changes, if we think the level of confusion that's out there now is bad, changing midstream again and having indexes and people not knowing where they're going to stand, when is it going to do, they're going to try and predict what's going to happen, it's going to create even more chaos out there.
I didn't say reverse, I said suspend.
It has the same effect.
An independent review is done.
Deputy, it has the same effect.
Okay.